comprehensive, I should say, stock taking of the issue at hand. I have been provided by the Secretariat with 6 letters containing their positions of different agencies. We also have agencies represented here today which were not able to submit their position papers. However, we would like to listen to them. But before we do so, I'd like to tackle first the agencies who have, I'll begin with the departments and then the agencies who have all submitted their position papers. What I'll do is, I'll give a recap of what the position was submitted. And if you have anything more that you'd like to reiterate or add to your position paper, I will open the floor to you. In the case of the Department of National Defense, they strongly support the enactment. However, they propose that, they merely want to reiterate that the bill should continue to support the use of non-lethal weapons for the maintenance of public security, as well as the use of riot control agents, such as tear gas and the like. Anything more that the DND would like to add to this position? Okay, stand detected. There are 2 more from the DOTC and the NDI. So I take it that the DND has already submitted their position. Next, we'd like to hear from our representative from the DFA. And the basic contention of the DFA is that they are in support of the creation of a PNA. However, they would like to propose a definition for facility to be included as provided in its Senate counterpart under Senate Bill 2014. They're also encouraging the passage of the House counterpart here in the House. So unless the DFA would like to add to this position, may we hear from the DFA.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I'd like to ask for the indulgence of the Honorable Chair in this body. I signed this letter on behalf of my Assistant Secretary, but I take note now that I made a mistake twice by quoting the wrong House Bill number. It should be House Bill 2709, twice below 2707, so I apologize for that. And in addition to this, we would like to reiterate our full support and encouragement for the passing of this House Bill. Apart from that, just very recently in the UN General Assembly, the 69th Assembly, sometime in October, we received a request for comments from our mission in New York, asking for our position and instructions on the draft resolution submitted by Poland. And it was on the draft resolution on the chemical weapons prohibition and provision for their destruction and penalties for use. I am happy to report this morning that we have received confirmation from New York that this draft resolution was approved by a record vote of 175 in favor of the draft resolution. And there was no abstention and there was no report of any country who submitted record of non-support for this resolution.
Madam Director, pardon this committee's ignorance, but is that resolution, will that resolution rather have a substantial effect on how we are supposed to draft the wording of our bill? Does that have any impact on what has been previously contained in the CWC?
Not substantially, Mr. Chair, but I'd like to share the material with you also. We have actually shared that with the other members, and we received quite extensive comments from the Assistant Council, and we will also share that with this committee.
May I ask the body if you are amenable to the setup where the submission of the DFA, rather than be tackled in a PWG, be considered as part of the, or rather be considered in drafting the final report of the committee with regard to the bill? Would that be sufficient for our purposes? Without time objection, but if there is none, then we will await the submission of the DFA with regard to the submission of COLA and its adoption by the countries that were mentioned, the 100 or so countries. Thank you, DFA. May we hear this time from the Department of Justice and subsequently from the National Bureau of Investigation.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Subject to the submission of our official position paper, we manifest no constitutional or legal objection to the proposed bill, which is just but an exercise of the legislative power to make laws. Moreover, Mr. Chair, we also laud the ultimate objective of the bill, which is to concretize our country's international obligation to the Chemical Weapons Convention, which was conferred in by the Philippine Senate on 1996. However, initially, Your Honor, we would like to make some suggestions or recommendations with regard to Section 4 on the establishment of a Philippine National Authority for the Chemical Weapons Convention, or the PNACWC. Although we appreciate the Secretary of Justice is being considered as the Vice Chair of the committee, however, it is my view that there are other more competent agencies that can serve as the Vice Chair of the PNACWC. Although we would also want to be a member, but maybe we can consider a more competent agency to be the Vice Chair, considering the policy repercussions of this particular bill. With regard to Section 6, I'm referring to the second to the last paragraph thereof. There seems to be a typographical error in the wording, because it stated there that the prohibited acts are under Section 6. The prohibited acts, Mr. Chair, is in Section 5. So maybe we could correct that. With regard to Section 9 on licensing of chemicals, we suggest that since licensing is one of the powers of the PNACWC, that it be included in Section 4, which enumerates the duties and functions of the PNACWC. The committee may also consider that in addition to the granting of licenses, the authority to issue permits may be necessary to cover the import, export, transfer, and other things of the chemicals regulated under the proposed bill. We also given to the PNACWC. And I'm not sure, Your Honor, who else submitted their position papers, but we think that the other concerned agencies, especially the DNR, the DND already submitted their position paper, Your Honor. DFA and under their recent cancel, because we hope that they will be submitting also their official position paper on the bill, Your Honor. We will be submitting our position paper once it is signed by the Secretary of Justice. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Attorney Razak. Before we proceed to MBI, may I just say this in behalf of the committee? Usually the process is after we conclude our TWG, I, as TWG chairman, will report the proceedings of the TWG to the Mother Committee for their adoption. Only then will the Mother Committee issue its committee report. So at any time between now and my report to the Mother Committee, pending your further study, although you may have submitted, you can still submit further inputs for further fine-tuning. And at any time between that time of my report to the Mother Committee until the plenary, there are still other avenues by which you can submit your inputs to further improve the bill. So please be assured that you are not constrained in any way from helping the committee and the House from coming up with a very strong and very good version of what we will eventually pass into law. So with that qualification, we will hear from the NBI with regard to the contents of your position.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, Your Honor. The Director has manifested through the position paper his strong support for the legislation and the CWC bill and the creation of the Philippine National Authority on Chemical Weapons Convention. Although he has a query on his letter as regards the clear role of the NBI in this in the creation of the Philippine National Authority, CWC. What I can surmise from the Director's query is that what will be the role of the Bureau? Will it be in the enforcement of the law, investigation of violations of the law, or intelligence gathering? Because the NBI can do those three functions. And also, the NBI has well-trained forensic chemists, so the NBI can also assist the PNA in conducting inspections and in enforcing inquisitorial powers if ever it's to be provided by the law. And also, the NBI can also help train the inspectors in the forensic chemists and the investigators who are quite adept in weapons of mass destruction, chemical weapons. They can help train the inspectors who will be employed by the PNA. The NBI can also work proactively with the Bureau of Customs, because we believe that the Bureau of Customs should take an active role, especially because it's in the front line. As we all know that in the problem of nuclear proliferation, customs enforcement has been strengthened in other countries. So it was to prevent the entry of nuclear weapons in their respective countries, as what has been done by, for example, the Thankyou network in Pakistan and other Middle Eastern nations. So we will work proactively with customs in the interdiction, the possible interdiction of chemical weapons that will be legally transported into the country. So this is all about.
Attorney Mangera, this is how I will reply to the NBI's query. I would like to believe that the more specific provisions with regard to how NBI, for example, or the other tasked agencies will perform under a PNA-CWC framework, I would remand that to the time when the IRR shall be drafted. However, in order for the drafters of the IRR to be given both the leeway and authority to put more specific provisions into the IRR, I would like to recommend that both the NBI and the DOJ work closely between now and probably January, when we resume session, to come up with the catch-all provisions which we can use to be the basis eventually when we draft the IRR. Kung meron kayo gustong ipasok sa bill na catch-all provisions or just a provision, which it can eventually be fleshed out in IRR, we would appreciate such because it is the contention of the committee that the NBI as the operational arm of the DOJ and the DOJ having policy supervision over the NBI will be in a better position to define, so to speak, your place in the sun. So may we ask that of you? Or if you can submit it within a week, the committee would very much appreciate it. However, you have until January when we resume session to submit that proposed provision. I would recommend that if there are similar agencies under similar departments, meron pa parehong situation to do the same thing. Otherwise, kung covered naman sa bill yung kinalalagyan nyo, then let that suffice. So, is NBI and DOJ amenable to that suggestion?
We will be discussing it with them in your researching.
Kasi po, kapareho ng AFP, what the bill, I think, where the bill has a weakness was to specify the units of the AFP. In so doing, yung hindi na specify tuloy, obviously parang implication na umitin sila. Whereas, by just mentioning that the AFP is being tasked, all the subordinate units under the AFP necessarily become part of the framework. So, yun po yung naging situation. So, if the NBI sees fit to further specify it, eventually that will be done in the IRR. However, a catch-all provision, which will give you that leeway and that flexibility, can be introduced into the bill. Okay? So with that, we'd like to hear from the DOH. I am in receipt of their position paper. However, I'd like to clarify that Dr. Morales both represents the FDA and the DOH in this case.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, may we hear from the DOH and FDA?
Well, Your Honor, there's just one recommendation from my part which I can add. Currently, for the regulation of chemicals in general, there are a number of agencies responsible for chemicals. One of them is the Fertilizer and Pesticide Authority. The other one is the Food and Drug Administration. What we would want to avoid in this bill is the gaps and the overlaps which are so common in regulation. Now, if the bill is sufficiently general, hopefully we can cure whatever problems in the IRR. Presently, that is the only concern that we have at the moment, Your Honor.
Just a question out of curiosity.
Yes.
In the case of PIDEA, meron silang pinapatanggal sa amin na list. We're amenable to that, no? In your case ba, would the situation be similar? You would prefer that we take off the list certain substances and chemicals which you already or another agency are regulating para maiwasan natin yung sinasabi mong overlap. Ako, I'm very concerned about what you are saying about gaps.
And overlaps.
And the last thing we'd like to happen is that we still allow gaps to fall through the cracks, di ba?
Yes. Based on our experience with the Food Safety Act, the Food Safety Act involves 5 very large regulatory agencies. What we did was we did not specify the list in the law. We specified it in the IRR instead. That gives everyone flexibility to discuss everything.
So in this case, you are recommending the same approach?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Morales. Next, we'd like to hear from the IDEA with regard to your position. By the way, the DG also communicated directly to this representation with regard to your concerns, but we'd like to hear them for the record here in this TWG.
Good morning, Your Honor. The Director General fully support the proposed law. However, he recommend that, again, we would like to reiterate that recommend that thionyl chloride excluded from the chemicals to be licensed by PNAs CWC because it is already covered by the regulatory function of compliance service BDO. And I would recommend that that PNA CWC will just exercise the oversight function to ensure the same will not be used for manufacture of chemical weapons. And again, a recommendation will ensure that companies importing and using the said chemical will deal with only one government regulatory agency, which is in consonance with Philippines campaign ensuring the ease of doing business in the Philippines.
Thank you, Asek Ramos. May I just react in this manner? And maybe I could invite the APC to also comment. In cases where there are existing agencies already regulating and issuing licenses to certain chemicals and substances, I think if I am correct, the objective of the bill is not to curtail that. However, for those things which are currently under the radar, yung hindi napapansin, but should be under the purview of government, yun ang gusto mong i-address ng PNA-CWC. Did I understand it correctly, if that this is the case? Kasi the last thing we'd like to do is, yun na, sabi natin, in promoting ease of doing business, ayaw natin mag-double regulate. Dalawang ahensya ang dalawa o tatlo ang pupuntahang ahensya ng negosyante para lang kumuha ng lisensya. So, I think that's clear naman dito. But unless APC would like to clarify that, sir?
So as far as the APC is concerned, what the bill should actually promote actually is not necessarily the regulation, but actually the how the government would actually make the declarations to the OPCW. As provided for, we can actually during the discussions in we actually introduced that the licensing provision can actually be delegated. We actually took out the licensing and just put for provision with the help of the chemical industry that registration, only registration should be provided, not necessarily licenses. The important thing is that we have the authority, the government will have the authority to actually get the information from the different agencies of government and the industry at the same time. Because right now, the government has no power to oversee the industry. We have only DNR, PDEA for certain chemicals, but not as far as the precursors or scheduled chemicals for the CWC. So as long as we get the information, we have the power to get the information. That's all right with the ABCDMC. As long as this information will give us the necessary the information that we need to declare to the OPCW. But as far as the information, by the way, is guided by the different threshold measures as provided by the OPCW. The OPCW has through the convention, the verification annex of the convention, it is easy to actually see how we can actually implement this bill. Not necessarily to license the industry, but actually just to inspect them, so that we know whether not only the items in the industry, but also their facilities and their units, because that is more not only their possession of the different chemicals, but also whether they're actually capable of developing chemical weapons. So that's the main idea, sir. To give the government the power to inspect, get the information, and make the declarations of the OPCW. As far as the OPCW is concerned, that's That's the compliance that we need to actually accomplish. So whether it's licensing, registration, it's a matter of semantics, but as long as we make the declarations, it's okay with official license. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir, for that clarification. So, the way I understand it, ganito, no? For the purposes of our international obligation, it is merely enough that there is a focal agency that will report to OPCW. However, in terms of what is happening on the ground, if a chemical needs to be regulated and licensed, then there is a proper agency. That would still be the lookout of the CWC. However, if our obligation only calls for the reporting as to the volume, the uses, and other similar information, then it shall not require the issuance of licenses or the regulation of such chemicals. So in short po, doon po sa mga agencies na merong ganong power currently, generally the stand of the ATC is, as is represented in the bill, is not to clip your powers. Okay? So you have that assurance. But please, be on the lookout lang. Baka in the course of the progress of the bill, baka merong mangyaring unnecessary tawag dito, diminution of your power. So, hindi talaga intention niya dito. Okay? So, let me assure PIDEA and other similar agencies. May we proceed with... yes, may we hear from DOJ and then from the
Yes, Mr. Chair, considering the comments of the other agencies, is it possible, I know this will take a lot of work, is it possible for, I'm not sure if it would be the Secretariat or upon submission of the agencies concerned, to determine which agencies are implementing what under this bill? Because right now, I am not sure which agencies are mandated to implement some provisions that are already included in the bill, because it would make it easier for the committee to understand the whole picture and to avoid also the overlapping of factions later on, so that it would be clear to everyone that the demarcation line on the particular factions of each agency. Mr. Chair, that would be my suggestion.
Dr. Morales, do you have the same contention as the DOJ?
Your Honor, may I make a second recommendation?
Okay, please.
In addition to what I've said earlier about making the bill more general and specifying it in the IRR, we're currently working on the Philippine Nuclear Regulatory Bill, and there's a clause which we inserted to ensure that no other regulatory agencies will insert CLIP. The clause is usually phrased in the following manner: that this law shall not in any way prevent any other government regulatory agencies from exercising their mandate as provided for in other laws. So a clause similar to such may be added at the very end.
Okay, if I may marry your suggestion with that of Attorney Ragsak, where an advantage can be established by delineation, we will do so. But where a general provision like what you just offered can offer that flexibility as well, then we will also put that. Kasi ang mangyayari niyan, pag wala tayong clear delineation, if we rely on that initial provision, there is the necessary implication na magkakaroon ng duplication. Okay? So I think we will have to carry those two suggestions. Yes.
Your Honor, in order to avoid the duplication of functions, I believe that's what the IRR will serve. That is the purpose of the IRR, Your Honor.
Yes, Attorney Ragsak.
May I just remind the body, Your Honor, that the IRR